What's up everyone, Humble Farmer Taiki here and welcome to this week's edition of Farms of the Week. If you like the content, please like and subscribe and check out the premium Discord, link will be in the description below. So let's get right into it. So happy DYM week for anyone that celebrates it. Mainnet is launching very soon and there will be no claim process. So if you got the airdrop, you don't need to claim anything. It should just be airdropped right to your wallet. So that's pretty cool. And Dymension apparently will be listed on Bitfinex tomorrow. So I'm assuming that, Mainnet and the token will go live tomorrow. When it comes to these very anticipated and hyped up token launches, you should have a plan before these types of events. Because if you just wake up tomorrow and you just log on to Twitter and everyone's shilling it, and then you decide to buy, then there's a chance that you're like the dumb money, right? It can still work out for you, but you want to be educated ahead of these things, so you're not making emotional and rash decisions the day of. So hopefully this video acts as somewhat of an educational video on the bull case for Dymension, because we are bullish at HFA Research. So I've talked about Dymension a lot in my videos. We've also written about it at HFA. I'll provide this in the description if you're interested. I'm not going to read through this because it could get rather boring, but I'll try to talk through it because maybe people have a better, better learning style by listening to some random guy on the internet wearing a farmer hat holding a plastic rake. So hopefully this video is somewhat helpful. So in order for you to understand the bull case for Dymension, you should understand these different types of blockchain architectures, right? So the monolithic thesis is Solana, where one chain does everything: execution, settlement, consensus, and data availability. It's also the integrated chain thesis, where it's one chain that does it all. Liquidity is not fragmented. It's less decentralized, but it's very fast and cheap. And Aptos and Sui falls under this camp. And then there's also the modular approach, and this is what Ethereum is trying to do, where Ether. So first of all, Ether, right? Ether mainnet can do execution, settlement, and data availability, but of course it's very, very expensive. So the Ethereum scaling roadmap says that Ethereum will do settlement, and we'll do the data availability, but let's try to push more activity towards L2s, and they can focus on execution. So that's kind of what they're going for. And then, Celestia and Dymension comes out of nowhere, in 2024 and says, you know what, instead of trying to focus on doing multiple things at once, let's just try to specialize in each layers of the stack. So Celestia just focuses on data availability, right? With Celestia and Light nodes, chains and rollups can post data on Celestia and have a 100x cost reduction compared to using Celestia for data availability. Ethereum for data availability. One example is Manta Network. Manta is the first modular L2, and they have 100x reduction in fees because they use Celestia for DA instead of Ethereum. And also, Dymension comes in and says, you know what, let us also focus on the settlement layer. So I guess comparing Ethereum to, the Celestia ecosystem, Ether is focusing on settlement, and then also data availability. I'll talk about Eigenlayer later, and then L2s will focus on execution. The problem is that, all L2s are fragmented, and they can't really share liquidity with one another. For example, application on Arbitrum can't really access liquidity on Optimism. You can have a market maker in the middle, but it's not really perfect. And Celestia and Dymension says, we'll focus on data availability, or Celestia will focus on DA, Dymension will focus on settlement, and then application-specific rollups, aka roll-apps, so app chains, can just focus on execution, and they can share liquidity with one another. So I think the best way to understand it is going to the portal. So if you go to I think this is portal.dymension.xyz. I can also link it in the description below, but this is currently on testnet. And right now, there's 1,000 roll-apps listed and 14,000 roll-apps deployed. Most of these are probably just not real, right? People are just deploying random things to get the airdrop and whatnot. But let's just focus on this one, Conan. So this is Detective Conan, right? It's the Japanese anime or the manga. I used to read this book when I was little in Japanese, but it kind of looks kind of fake, right? It probably is fake, but if you just go to the website here, it's kind of legit. It's not actually legit, but there's this testnet application. Let me kind of zoom out. There's this I don't know, some X social layer. There's this Conan wallet. There's this Kong Dex. There's this launchpad, or it all seems super fake, right? But there are people just deploying these random roll apps on Dymension, and it seems the narrative is definitely, well, there's all these roll apps, right? And surely most of them are going to have tokens. I mean, Conan token, KYN token, DYM token, brick token, FEQ token. And if they're using, for example, Avail for data availability, which is also like a Celestia competitor, and Dymension for settlement, then surely, maybe some of these applications will airdrop a token to Dymension stakers, similar to how, rollups that use Celestia for DA, like Dymension, is airdropping their token to TIA stakers. So that's definitely the narrative, right? Stake TIA for airdrops and the stake DYM for airdrops. But what's the value accrual for DYM? And obviously, value accrual doesn't really matter. Celestia makes $100 a year. So does the valuation really make sense? Of course, I've talked about this before. I think Celestia is entering a bubble. It might be in a bubble right now, and people don't care about the valuation because people just stake it for airdrops. And a similar effect might happen for DYM as well. One exception for this rule is that there is actual value accrual for DYM. For example, Dymension has a built-in AMM. So Celestia just focuses on posting data, but the settlement layer actually handles the transfer of funds. And all these roll apps actually share liquidity with the Dymension hub. So with L2s like Arbiter and Optimism, it's fragmented liquidity. But with all these roll apps, if they choose to use Dymension hub for the settlement layer, they can share liquidity with one another. So the problem with fragmented liquidity can be fixed. So that's one bull case. And on testnet, I'm not sure what it's going to be like on mainnet. I can only speak for the testnet, but there's all these, for example, the CON token, right? The Conan token. All the liquidity is paired with DYM. So if you envision a scenario where thousands of roll apps, maybe millions of roll apps launch sometime in the future, and they all have liquidity on the Dymension hub paired with the DYM token, then you can extrapolate and say that, well, if valuable applications launch on Dymension, then part of that liquidity has to be paired with DYM. So with more TVL on the network, with more roll apps on the network, that means that DYM has to secure more funds, which also funnel, or not, maybe not funnel, but which also has more value accrual for the DYM token itself. And because there's a built-in AMM, which takes a swap fee, right? And if you look into the Dymension documentation, if you look at the demand section, part of the fees for the sort of protocol swap fees and the bridging fee is going to be burned. I don't really think it matters that much early on because it's going to be omega inflationary. The inflation rate's going to be pretty high at launch. I'm not really sure what it's going to be. So I don't really think it matters. But if you actually care about future value accrual and whether or not Dymension can make money and be deflationary or whatever, then yeah, there's a built-in AMM, there's a bridge, they take a fee, and that goes into buying back the token. And I highly recommend reading this article by Stratos. They were one of the seed investors of Dymension. Brilliant job. They had this foresight. I definitely didn't see this, but they argued that Dymension is going to be modular money, where Dymension introduces the RDK, the roll-up development kit, which makes it easy to deploy roll apps. And if it makes it easy to deploy roll apps, then we should expect more roll apps to launch because there's composability. You don't have to build an app chain on Ethereum, pay rent to Ethereum, fragmented liquidity, and no TVL flows into your chain. Well, if Dymension shares liquidity, or if applications just share liquidity with one another, then surely, right, it should attract more developers. And that also means that teams don't have to inflate their token away to attract liquidity. So composability attracts more rollups, number of rollups increase. And if some of these rollups have tokens that have value, then that's more value accrual to DYM. And then more DYM, or the higher the DYM price goes, the security for the Dymension hub increases, and then the Dymension ecosystem flourishes, and then you kind of have this network effect of more rollups have more value accrual to DYM, and more, the higher price for DYM, the increased security, which attracts more developers, and you kind of have this flywheel, I suppose. So this is all in theory, but this is definitely the bull case, right? Where we have applications like Lyra and Avo just leaving Ethereum, right? They're like, fuck Ethereum, we're not going to pay rent to Ethereum. Let's just post data to Celestia and have our users enjoy 100x lower fees. So similarly, like why won't Avo and Lyra, like why wouldn't they, like migrate to Dymension for settlement instead of ETH? Is it gonna happen? I have no idea. I don't have any information, but that's definitely the idea, right? Like, and if you look at Yishe, he's the founder, the idea behind Dymension is very simple. By introducing the roll-up development kit, RDK, it's like similar to like the SDK, right? Let's make it easy, right? Dymension does to application-specific blockchains, so like app chains or roll apps. So Dymension does to app chains what Ethereum did to NFTs in the ERC20s. So ETH made it really easy to create new tokens and create new NFTs, and Dymension is trying to make it really easy to create new app chains. Is it really out of the question for projects like GMX to be like, you know what, like let's just decide to settle on Dymension? GMX was even talking about, I mean, this is like two years ago, I think, but they were talking about, I guess, moving to like the Synapse chain. So there's like some composability there. I mean, I'm not really sure what's happening with Synapse chain, but GMX was already looking into it. So like, why wouldn't they do it, right? It's not really out of the question. And as more projects migrate to Dymension, I mean that's like the ultimate bull case, right? Like more and more, I guess, like Ethereum based applications to, I guess. Yeah, like new it's definitely a new design space. It creates more options for new devs and new use cases, and these new projects may have tokens. Some might airdrop to airdrops. Some projects might airdrop to Dymension stakers, and that's kind of the idea, right? Stake Dime to receive airdrops, and if all these roll apps have tokens, that could be worthwhile. This is all my research and speculation, right? There's a lot of discussion on Twitter around stake Dime for airdrops, and all these people, they're just going off of what I said, but like it's not actually confirmed, right? I literally just said, hey, like this might happen because there's all these roll apps on testnet. It's not confirmed. I think it makes sense intuitively. I don't really see why it wouldn't, but like nothing is guaranteed. But basically, Celestia and Dymension, if you think about it, is kind of competing with Ethereum and Eigenlayer, because Eigenlayer, right, also does data availability, and I think this is like one of the few narratives Ether has going for it, where right now Ether is focused on settlement and DA, but like Eigenlayer with EigenDA just can like kind of break it apart into three parts, where Eigenlayer can focus on DA, and then Ether can focus on settlement, and then I guess new rollups can focus on execution. And of course, there are trade-offs. Of course, Ethereum, right? Using Ethereum as a settlement layer is more decentralized, it's more secure. So maybe, with EigenDA, it's gonna make Celestia and Dymension obsolete. Honestly, I don't really have a strong view. I mean, it's literally a new token launching, right? So like, there's a lot of risk, but also there might be a lot of reward. But I'm bullish EigenDA, right? I'm bullish like this entire modular stack, to be honest. So I'm bullish Celestia and Eigenlayer because they focus on DA. I'm bullish ETH and Dymension because they focus on the settlement layer. And then I have less clarity on the execution layer because there's too many L2s. It's really hard to buy any of these L2 tokens because there's going to be so many of them. But the idea is stake TIA for L2 tokens, stake Dymension for application tokens. That's the idea. Right now, Avo is pricing DYM at $3.90. There's a lot of also discussions around, what has more value accrual, the settlement layer or the DA layer? Because, I mean, Celestia makes like $100 a year right now, all right? So, and the value prop of Celestia is that it makes it really, really cheap, right? Posting data make it really cheap. So if the value prop is to make things cheaper, then there's naturally should be less of value accrual, right? In terms of like revenue. But I guess like, there's also like network effects that people should take into account. And because the settlement layer, aka Dymension, actually, deals with like the transfer of funds and whatnot, and like is able to charge a fee, and similar to like this idea, right? More roll-up security and whatnot. Maybe the settlement layer ends up having more value accrual than the DA layer, and right now the DA layer is worth $18 billion FTV. Right, so like that's some Moonboy math here, and if you really want to do some Moonboy math, and I don't really believe this, but you can argue that Celestia and Dymension is competing with Eigenlayer and Ethereum, right? EigenDA and Ethereum. And Ethereum is worth like $250 billion right now. And if Celestia is worth 18 billion, then I would expect Eigenlayer to be worth like 20 to 30 billion. So maybe the total addressable market for TIA plus DYM is like $300 billion or whatever, right? Total moon math, but it could be a strong narrative. And because I am bullish, both TIA and Dymension, I will be dropping a validator. So if you want to speculate on staking Dymension, you can stake it with me. So because DYM is going to go live tomorrow, it should be live tomorrow. So starting tomorrow, you can stake with me. It's going to be called HFA, so my research company, and I'll make like a tutorial video or like an overview video tomorrow or Wednesday if you're curious. But if you want to know what I'm doing, I'll be staking my Dymension. Not all my Dymension, I'll probably stake half and then keep the rest liquid. But that's going to be my plan going forward. So hopefully that was a good overview of Dymension. I spent 60 minutes on it. If it didn't stick in your head, don't worry. Maybe rewatch this video. To be honest, I'm still learning. So I maybe got a few things wrong. I'm not really technical, right? I went to business school, so, I'm trying to figure this out as we go. But that's kind of the idea. So before actually, while we're on this topic, I do want to talk about Eigenlayer. Like I mentioned, Eigenlayer is focused on EigenDA. They're also working on restaking, and I think it's reasonable for it to be worth above Celestia. I think that's only natural. And if Celestia goes higher, then the implied valuation for Eigenlayer goes much higher too. And I believe, so I don't know when exactly these caps are going to be lifted, but you can restake your ETH with Eigenlayer and earn points. I've had a bunch of ETH in Eigenlayer, not anymore. But I used to, and they always had a cap. But starting on the 5th to the 9th, they're gonna lift their cap. So if you want to earn some points, and you think that Eigenlayer is gonna be worth like 20, 30, 40 billion at launch FDV, then whatever points you earn might be worth something. Just keep that in mind. It's only available on mainnet, but such is life. And speaking of, I guess, Eigenlayer restaking rollups, I did, I was kind of like really excited for the alt token airdrop for TIA stakers, and the criteria was dropped on the 2nd, and unfortunately, it was not as big as I as I anticipated. And no, there's a lot of people saying, airdrops are diluted, TIA staking is dead. I don't really think so, right? I talk about like the mid-curve airdrop fallacy, where there's like way more people complaining about airdrops than people airdrop farming, and you can't just judge like whether airdrops are diluted based off of like one single airdrop. And also AltLayer is an ETH aligned project, right? If you think about it. So the fact that they even airdropped TIA stakers was surprising, at the very least. So, it wasn't that big, right? I think, if you stake between 35 and 200 TIA, you got like 300 alt tokens. Actually, no, wait. Yeah, I think you got like 300-ish, and right now alt is trading at like 30 cents, 31 cents. So definitely not that great. But people in crypto love complaining about free money. I'm not complaining, right? At least they airdropped it, right? Unlike Manta Network, right? Manta Network just like rugged me, right? I was very disappointed. But what can I do, right? I'm not working for these teams. I'm literally a dude on the internet wearing a farmer hat. So that's that. Really excited for Eigenlayer and I guess like the Celestia ecosystem. I think this is going to be a really hot narrative. There's a lot of discussions around Solana versus ETH right now, but you can also think that Solana does things that Ether can't do, or monolithic chains does things that modular blockchains can't do, and vice versa. And there's a really good piece written by No Sleep John. I can also link this in the description below. But you can also argue that maybe Ether and Solana, they're not really competing with one another, right? Like maybe monolithic chains like Solana, they're competing with other monolithic chains like Aptos and Sui. And then modular blockchains like Ether, they're not really competing with Solana, but they're competing with Celestia and Dymension. And if you kind of think about it that way, then, you don't have to be bearish Solana if you're bullish ETH, right? And like vice versa. you can be bullish both because they do things that each other can't do. And maybe this is good for the entire space because like Solana can have more use cases and Ether can create some decentralized money or something, right? So for that reason, my views on the markets have changed in the last couple of months because the market changes really fast, so should your market outlook, and so should your portfolio. And I've been trying to adjust my portfolio over time by like having more, I guess, modular exposure, having more monolithic exposure. And one way that I want monolithic exposure is via JLP. So I know there was a lot of drama around JLP and a token launch because basically I'm not going to talk about it too much because this video is going to get way too long. But basically, what the team did was they basically set like if you understand how concentrated liquidity works on Uniswap V3, it's like, you can set a range for a token and just single-sided deposit. So basically what the team did was they said, like, let's set a range between 0.4 and 0.7 for the price of Jupiter. So $4 billion and $7 billion FDV. And if people want to buy our tokens, then they can do so, right? And after 7 days, the team is going to pull their liquidity. So right now, this liquidity pool has 90 million Jupiter tokens and $73 million USDC tokens. And after 7 days, the Jupiter team is going to just pull this liquidity. So they're basically doing an open market sale where $70 million worth of value went into this. And the team is like, okay, cool, thanks. And we'll pull it out. There's a lot of drama because a lot of crypto people, they don't really read. They don't really know how concentrated liquidity works. And then also like the team set this arbitrary valuation for their own token. And I think they're also charging like a 1% fee or something. I don't really know what fees they're making. But I think they made like $10 million. Actually here, right? They made like $8 million in fees and $5 million in JUP tokens. So they're going to get to keep both of this. Like if people want to ape into this, then they should do so. And also, the Jupiter application is pretty cool, right? Just because it's cool, like, should it be worth this much? I have no idea. But for me, I don't really feel comfortable buying Jupiter at this valuation. I don't really feel comfortable buying like meme coins on Solana or anything. So as a humble farmer, I want to, have like a way to farm things. So I've been looking at JLP. Every time I wake up like this, the AUM limit is filled. But it's kind of similar to like GLP, right? From GMX, where it's like 50% stablecoins-ish and 50% volatile assets. Then, if people are trading in this pool and they get liquidated, you make money. If they make money, you lose money. And if they pay like $1,000 worth of funding, you also make money from fees. If you want to learn more about how GLP works, I made a video on this like a year and a half ago, right? When I was like a GMX/GLP bull. I still like both assets, but I can't hold everything, to be honest. And if you want more color on, whether the Jupiter airdrop was, grift or great, I do a podcast with Jordy, Thicky, and Justin. We talk about this in detail. So if you're interested, make sure to check this out. So that's gonna be it for me. Definitely like both the monolithic and the modular thesis. I mid-curved Solana. So, if I mid-curved it, then I have to, if I want to buy into the thesis, then I have to buy higher, which I'm totally okay with. But because I'm a humble farmer, I just like want Solana exposure to this. JLP is 40% Solana, 9% ETH, 7% Bitcoin, and like 40% stables. You can buy JLP on the open market. So I think, right now, let's see. Look at this, right? JLP is literally an up-only asset. You can buy it on the open market if you want, but it's currently trading at $2.01, right? 201. But no, JLP is actually worth like 197-ish. So you can pay a premium if you want exposure to it. It is like an up-only asset just because all the fees are auto-compounded. So like this is pretty cool. But I'm a boomer, right? So I'm gonna wait until the caps are lifted. There's like $30 worth, but I want to put more in it. So we'll see how Dymension does. It's currently trading at like $4. I think the bull case is. I'm just going off this Anson poll, but it seems like 37% of people think that the settlement layer should be worth more than the DA layer. The DA layer is worth 18 billion. So And it intuitively makes sense, right? Because they can actually monetize on fees, and the price of DYM is directly correlated with network security, which is important to some extent. I think what you should monitor is, are these rollouts real, right? Are they just like people like airdrop farming, right? I'm sure like 99% of these projects are like not real, but all it takes is like one big airdrop, right? Like just one legit airdrop that settles on Dymension, that give their token to Dymension stakers, and then we have like the whole stake DYM narrative get really, really strong. So we'll see. Really excited. I'll be staking my DYM with my validators. If I were you, I would, and you were staking, I would diversify your DYM stake, just in case there's like slashing events and like uptime and whatnot. It is a white label service, so I'm going through someone else, and they have like a 99% uptime, right? So it's one of the better validators I'm working with. But like don't go all in on any coin. Don't go all in on one validator, because you never know, right? But that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next week for Farms of the Week. Bye bye.